Hello, my name is Calvin Johnson, and my presentation is on the controversy surrounding how vulnerable bumblebees really are to radiation. Catherine Rains is a radiologist. She comes from University of Stirling, and she believes that her experiments on bumblebees prove insects are more negatively affected by radiation levels than we originally thought. However, some people believe that due to flaws in her experiments, as well as flaws in other people's experiments that originally appeared to back up Rains's conclusions, prove that her experiment does not actually prove anything just yet, and that more research needs to be done before conclusions can be reached. Catherine Rains did her experiment specifically to see how much radiation can negatively affect the bumblebee populations, and this was inspired by her visit to the Red Forest. The Red Forest is a forest near Chernobyl that was exposed to large amounts of radiation, and scientists will often use Chernobyl to study nature's and how it's affected by radiation, so that in the future, when using radiation, people will know how to protect nature from the radiation that could be emitted from anything that humans do that causes radiation. Catherine Rains placed 59 bumblebee colonies in a climate controlled radiation facility with a gamma emitting source. Each colony was exposed to gamma radiation at a different level. This ranged from 20 to 3,000 gray per hour. After 4 weeks, she took away the radiation and then monitored each colony's population and queen death rates. Queen death rates counts the amount of new queens that die before maturity. Uh, Queens need to be developed by bee colonies so that bees can ensure their continued existence and create new colonies and move forward. So, bumblebee queen dying would be really bad for the population. That is why she chose to measure that along with the population of the entire colony. Rains found that colonies exposed to as low as 100 gray per hour nearly halved the production of new queens. This conflicts with limited earlier studies that suggested bees would be safe under 400 gray per hour. This is all using measurements of gray. Gray is a unit of measurement that measures radiation. So, this data, it matches up with research done by Timothy Massou and Anders Pape-Moller. These two scientists chose points at different levels of radiation near Chernobyl and took a census of the insect populations there. Their studies showed a clear negative correlation between populations and radiation levels. This correlation continued into lower levels of radiation than even Rain's experiment went to, and showed that even 1 gray per hour could negatively impact some insect populations, just slightly, but enough to be a negative impact that was statistically significant. However, there are people who disagree with the conclusions of these studies. Moeller is criticized for using handheld dose meters, which are infamous for having problems and not being exact. Moeller is also criticized for having data that is heavily skewed by outliers. And specifically, it is said that Moeller did not account for other factors, such as, say, radiation having a negative effect on other elements in nature that would then affect the insect populations. So, radiation would have an indirect effect on the insect populations, but not a direct effect on the insect populations. The insect bodies would not be affected by the radiation and could still have this data be accurate. Correlation is not causation. There is a need for an experiments such as the experiments Catherine Rains did in a controlled environment in order to confirm causation directly. But Catherine Rains admits that in her experiments, she only had 7 boxes at levels below 50 gray per hour. This is because she assumed that she would see no negative effects at levels lower than 400 gray per hour because of the previous experiments that claimed that. So, it is suggested that her experiments do need to be repeated in order to make sure that they are accurate.